Good afternoon to you. I am Mark Sudduth here in Wilmington, North Carolina. It is Monday, December 26, 2022, and today we're going to talk about this big change in the pattern. Wet out west. Very good news for at least the water concerns out west. Not so good news if you've got travel plans or you just don't like disruptive weather, because it is coming. An atmospheric river is going to set up. Feet of snow coming for the Sierra, the Cascades, lots of rainfall. A good thing in the long term, but again, a pretty disruptive pattern coming up for people that have travel interest in anything related to that in the west. But in the east, we're going to warm things up after the bitter cold that we've just had. Record-setting temperatures all the way down to Florida, Miami, setting a record high minimum temperature yesterday, Christmas Day. Didn't even make 50 degrees in Miami, Florida. It's cold, and I'm going to show you. I've got a meme for that. All right, good of you to join me. I hope you had a great Christmas. Here we go. Let's talk about the weather. First of all, this cute little meme that I saw. Somebody posted this. I think I saw it on my Facebook. You know it's cold outside when you go outside and it's cold. And that really holds true for me, because I am basically one of these people. There's another meme where you see the guy, he's wearing like a hoodie and shorts and like slides or sandals or whatever. Well, that's me. It really takes a lot for me to get cold. I'm not one of these people that has to bundle up everything, all the toes, all the fingers. So yes, when it's cold outside and I'm bundled up, then you know it is darn cold. And it has been. We had a change in the pattern. We dropped a lot of polar air down into the lower 48. It did not align properly to give us a big East Coast storm of a coastal variety, but we have certainly had a very impactful storm system. Unfortunately, dozens of people have lost their lives because of it. A historic blizzard in the Buffalo area. I was just there about a month ago for the lake effect snow in mid-November. This was a completely different animal. Was not up there for that. I have traveled enough lately. Actually, I might be traveling again soon. I'll talk about that. I would still be stuck up there, probably. But let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at what's happening in the news. We'll go over to Fox Weather real quick here on Twitter. And yeah, that is a really sad headline there, but it's true. Dozens dead after a blizzard and the bomb cyclone, and it really was. That's not just a made-up term in the media there or on social media. Bomb cyclone, that's a real thing in meteorological definitions. It really dropped into the low 950 millibars, the surface low, up in Canada. It tracked a little different than we're seeing when we think about an East Coast storm. Instead of going up the coast, it was much farther inland, but the impacts were incredible. Snow and grapple and sleet all the way down to Cocoa, Merritt Island, Melbourne area, Florida, all those areas. Very cold temperatures down into the peninsula of Florida. Frigid temperatures in the Carolinas and all the way up into New England. And then we had the coastal impacts. Even though this storm was not on the coast, you had onshore flow with storm surge and high waves in parts of Maine and into areas of the Northeast as a whole. Just a big, impactful system. And as this picture here shows on this tweet here from Fox Weather, pileups on the interstate systems. And in Buffalo, of course, they couldn't even get 911 and responders to get out and do what they are trained to do. It literally froze everybody into place, so to speak. A terrifying situation, very reminiscent of some of the Hollywood movies that we have seen over the years. The Day After Tomorrow comes to mind. This is not far from that hyperbolic movie. That took things to the extreme. And I'll show you another tweet here. This is also from Fox Weather. Some video that they've got. This is from somebody that contributed through Storyful, and this is what it looked like up there. I was watching this on social the last few days. Reed Timmer was up there, of course. Brandon Clement. Just incredible images coming out, and those guys were hammered, and they're used to severe weather and these rough conditions. Reed and Brandon, and you should have seen some of the video that they posted. Just remarkable and very, very deadly, with dozens of people, like I said, being killed in this. There's not a good situation, and this was well forecast. We saw this coming for days on end before it happened. I talked about it back on the 21st with my update then. Lots of travel problems, thousands of people stuck. We saw it coming. This is why it is so uber important to pay attention to the weather. Hurricanes might be sort of the Super Bowl of weather. I mean, that's really one of the biggest weather events that we can cover. That is what I have studied for the better part of my career. But as I have broadened my horizons, because I am a weather geek at heart, understanding these other high impact weather events, seeing how the weather does connect us, it does interrupt us in some cases, and in other cases, unfortunately, it can cause loss of life and a lot of grief for people, even outside these big, very sensational, attention-getting hurricanes that we are known for here at HurricaneTrack. These other systems, like this big bomb cyclone and the storm up there, the blizzard in Buffalo and that region, very impactful and very important for people to stay on top of that. That is why I want to draw your attention to this. All right, we're going to shift from the eastern parts of the United States to out west. Okay, this comes from the University of Madison and their Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies. That's that CIMSS. We use that a lot during hurricane season, but it is also very helpful outside of hurricane season. Here's a great example. This atmospheric river, big flow of moisture going to set up, aiming to the Pacific Northwest, the Cascades, down into the Sierras, all of California, Washington, Oregon, into the interior, Nevada, Utah, the Four Corners region, parts of the Rockies. Yes, you're going to get a lot of moisture, a lot of snow, a lot of rain. A good thing in the long run to help bust up the drought, the severe drought out there. And look, I want to really hammer this very, very hard. Water out west, I've heard stories. I have been out there myself. I've seen it. Again, it's part of me over these last several years expanding beyond the high impact news events of hurricanes and studying other different types of weather phenomenon, from the Great Lakes lake effect machine, the nor'easters that impact the Northeast, of course, but we don't want to forget out west. I think the West kind of gets left out, and not much weather happens out there. You think of San Diego or LA or San Francisco, where the weather is generally fairly tranquil most of the time, but you do have the drought that's ongoing out there, this long-term drought situation, a very, very big problem out there, especially in the summer months when it is so scorching hot. You get the wildfire concerns now, and we're not even in an El Nino pattern. Typically we get this type of setup when the Pacific is warmer than average. We're just very lucky right now in one regard, lucky being that we're going to get the moisture, but it is going to come with impacts because we, us people, live where these big weather events happen. So this atmospheric river forecast by the global models, very well telegraphed, as we say, in advance. We can see this coming, bringing very heavy snow to the mountain areas, rain in the lower elevations, the possibility of some flooding. That could obviously impact travel. And then snow, you got to love it in the building up that snowpack. It's not just great for the skiing and the economy that is revolved around that, but also the long-term snowpack, because that runs off in the spring months and it provides fresh water for millions of people. The infrastructure out there, just the beauty of the landscape out in that region, the animals, the flora, the fauna out there, they need that moisture too. It's not just for us humans. It is a good thing for the overall environment out there. So when you see these maps here, yes, it's going to be impactful, but again, this is a good thing in the long run, and it's not going to be just this one storm. I'll show you that as we look at the global model here, the GFS in particular, going forward. So here's what it's going to look like in terms of snowfall, greater than 36 inches along the spine of the Sierra here, but even getting into the parts of the Wasatch Range and areas of the mountains of Arizona over here and parts of the Rockies. You gotta love it. And then even in the areas of the Rockies that go up through lesser known areas, at least to me. You don't talk about Wyoming and Idaho or Montana that much. You being us, the weather community, kind of gets left out, right? I don't want that to happen. We got to talk about this. People live there. It's an impactful event. And then, of course, the Sierra, all the way up. There's the Sierra there to the Cascades, the Olympic Mountains, you name it. Good to see, great to see, I think, especially for the snowpack that's going to survive even after this storm. So this is what it looks like on the global forecast system, the GFS. There's the first storm system getting ready to come in here out west. Our big old area of high pressure starting to moderate here over the eastern United States. gradually moderating. It's like when you open up the kitchen, the freezer door in the kitchen, and that cold air comes out and it spills along the floor. Within just a matter of seconds to maybe a minute, it dissipates. Well, this is like somebody left the freezer door open to Canada all the way up to the Arctic Circle, and it just takes a few days for it to moderate, but moderate it shall, and we're going to definitely warm those temperatures up. I'll show you that in just a moment. But first, let's look at the actual, I call this sort of the weather map. I really like this rendition here that Dr. Cowan has made. It's just easy for someone like me to show you how the weather progresses. And the blue, of course, is your frozen precip. Purples is kind of your in-between freezing rain, sleet, that kind of thing. And then your greens, dark greens, and your brighter colors of oranges and reds would be rain and very heavy rain at that. But watch how things progress here. This is day 4. The second storm comes into the Pacific Northwest, maybe some heavy rain down here along the Gulf Coast where things will warm up. Remember, the Gulf is still much above normal, so there's a lot of extra energy out there and warm, moist air lurking. I'll show you that too momentarily. But a pretty active pattern with these storms moving progressively, quickly across the country from west to east. The flow is going to be more what we call zonal, going across the continent, almost like the latitude lines instead of the longitude lines. So as opposed to the cross-polar flow that we saw with these longitudinal troughs, let me just draw one on here just to pretend. Instead of the pattern looking like this with a huge trough in the east with low pressure here and storms and high pressure out west, it's more zonal. That means that basically the air is coming off the Pacific and it is moving from west to east, kind of like this, a little bit of a wavy pattern. It's not a straight line, but you're not getting that deep longitudinal flow from the poles coming out of the North Pole in this case. If it came from the South Pole, we'd be in trouble, wouldn't we? But yes, it's a different type of pattern that'll flood the country with milder air, milder, ER. It's not warm like summer, but not Arctic frigid, crazy cold like we just saw. But cold enough out west here that in the higher elevations especially, yes, you will see some heavy snow. The lower elevations, the rain. This is 6 days out. And then finally, as we start the new year, 2023, 1 week from today here, January 2nd, yes, things will be, I think the third storm starting to knock on the door there. So let's go back and just rewind it a little bit. Start over from where we are right now. First storm comes in, very heavy rain, etc. The second storm comes in right towards New Year's Eve in the first part of January. And then, as I said, a week from now, it looks like a third storm system knocking on the door there, coming into the Pacific Northwest. I advanced it out just a little bit. That's just too far out in time to really put much stock into it. But the next few days especially, 5 to 7 days, very active in terms of storminess. Now, what about the temperatures? Let's look at that under the thermodynamics part, and we can look at the 2-meter temperatures. That's not what I wanted. Try again, Mark. Let's do the shaded. That shows up better. All right, so right now, still a little bit chilly in the east, but watch what happens. You start to moderate that air, and look at that big surge there pushing 30s all the way up into Canada. That's a huge warm-up from where we've been, where it's been below zero. They'll take the 30s, I would believe. But yeah, the new year looks like it's going to be mild in the east and stormy and seasonably cold out in the west. And you can see that very well here. Some troughing out west, ridging in the east, but not really highly amplified. And that is the big key here. No giant digging troughs. It's more of a zonal wavy pattern than these big-time longitudinal troughs like what we just saw that dropped that very cold and stormy air. Well, the air was cold and the stormy pattern followed. Really, the temperature contrast helped to fire up that big-time bomb cyclone that brought all of the misery we have seen east of the Rockies. We're not going to have that in place nearly to the same degree as we just saw. Stormy, wet, mild in the east, chilly out west, seasonably so, maybe a little bit below normal, but nothing absurd except with the precip. The precip should be running above normal out west. And again, I've said it a lot, and even in this update, that's a good thing. We want that. I know it's a pain in the butt to have to deal with it, but you need the water. All right, let's shift over to the tropics real quick. We're still just inside 6 months until hurricane season. And being that this is HurricaneTrack, we will always talk about something, at least in these weekly updates, related to what's going on with hurricane season, the season to come. And one of the big keys that we watch for, or at least that I do, I keep an eye on this every week, is how the state of the ENSO, ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, how's it going with that? And because I think we know by now, El Nino typically means fewer Atlantic hurricanes. La Nina, especially neutral to La Nina, usually more Atlantic hurricanes. And we've been in a La Nina now for several years in a row. And there is some speculation, a lot of people thinking, well, surely we're going to go into an El Nino. We've been in La Nina so long now, it's inevitable, some would say, that we hit El Nino thresholds, to which I say, not so fast. Mainly that we can just look at certain parameters, and until they change, I'm not buying it. There's no reason to think out 8 months from now and say, yes, we're going to be in El Nino simply because we've been in La Nina so long. It doesn't work that way. The atmosphere doesn't have a memory, so to speak, oh, I must do this because of that. It's kind of like when people say that an area is overdue for a hurricane. That's just something that we humans have put on, sort of imprinted onto that, because in geologic time, it's just a mere blip. It's nothing. When you go a few years or 10 years without a hurricane or another weather event, you say we're overdue. Doesn't work that way. Same thing with El Nino and La Nina. Just because we've had 2 or 3 of them in a row, these La Ninas, doesn't mean we can't have another La Nina next year. Maybe, just maybe, we are semi-stuck in this ENSO negative pattern for a while. I don't know that, but one of the big clues, and this is where I bring to you my expertise, is what to look for. And one of these tools is the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index. It is not the sort of magic bullet cure-all. If you look at this, it's your guide to everything. But at least to me, it's a very good guidepost. And that is when it's strongly positive, like what we're seeing right now, we're typically in a La Nina state. That part seems to be pretty much infallible. And when it goes significantly negative, we typically flip the pattern and you're more in an El Nino base state. It's the way the pressure patterns are across the tropical Pacific. And this SOI, this index, helps to keep track of that on a daily basis. And as you can see, we dipped down to about 4 at the end of November, but we have risen coming up here towards the end of December. That's the 30-day. The 90-day has been fairly steady. And the 90-day is a really good indicator. I mean, it's a longer amount of time. And that 90-day average is at plus 13 and some change. That is pretty substantial. It's typically plus 7 and higher that gives us that La Nina base state. And we have definitely been at more than plus 7 for quite a while. And we will end December. Look at November, the 30-day average for November. It was getting a little lower there at 4.77. December is going to come in the mid-teens, it looks like. This is the daily contributor. The last 30 days is very close, of course, up here to the daily contributor. So, yeah, we're going to end December in positive territory. Now, what does that mean? It typically means that the pressure pattern is such that your easterly winds, and this is an oversimplification of it, but are nice and strong. Your trades, they're blowing strong. You have lower pressure way over here in the, this is, again, a vast oversimplification of it, but just to kind of explain it. Lower pressure in the western Pacific, high pressure in the eastern Pacific. Where does the wind blow? From areas of high pressure to low pressure, and those trades just keep on going, and you keep that Pacific stirred up. The upwelling continues, and until you flip that SOI, that seems to me, over the 30 years I've been studying this stuff, this is a good indicator. Until this flips and these numbers get substantially negative, this isn't going to change very much. You're going to gradually change it. Sure, nothing stays the same, but we're not in any hurry to flip over to El Nino. And this, And I know it's just a snapshot, but I think this is really interesting. I showed this a lot this time last year, going into the first part of January of this year. And again, you can go back and check out the videos if you're bored and you've watched everything you can from Christmas Story on whatever it is now. I mean, it's streaming. That's just a weird thing. I remember Christmas Story used to be on TBS 24 hours a day. Anyway, I digress. If you've burned out from watching videos on Netflix and anything else, you can go back and you can check out the videos from earlier this year. And I showed this, and it was very good. The CFS there, V2, really handled the state of the ENSO and where it was forecast to go. It didn't have any really big wild swings that really blew it or anything like that. And I find it interesting to note that in the current update, now this gets updated every day, so this is updated today, look at these blues that are starting to show up. These are some of your latest forecast members, and there's more of them now in the long term as we get into the summer, starting to suggest, some of those ensemble members, that we hold on to the La Nina. There's still a few here, certainly in the red. Those are your older members, but the latest forecast members, these are the more recent ones right through here, a little bit to the south end, if you want to call it that, or, on the lower side of the mean, right? So that's interesting. We'll have to see. A few of those blue members there indicating the possibility of La Nina holding on. Look at this one right here. This one member kind of dips it back down again. We'll see if that comes to pass. It's just one of all these different ensembles. But this is a tool that we can watch, and it's pretty much the only thing this time of year that's even worth keeping a strong eye on. Steering patterns, where the highs and lows are going to be, you can just forget that. Right now, this is the biggest puzzle piece, the state of the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon. How's that going? We can watch that at least once a week. And that's generally what I do. So we'll take a look at this as we start the new year. All right? All right, before I let you go, I realize I should have mentioned this before Christmas, but it's not too late. We do have a store. I'm going to circle it in green. You go over to HurricaneTrack.com. You go to the HT store. Our good friend CJ and Tim and Kari, they have helped put this together with their design ideas and putting everything online to build this store over at Teespring. A lot of YouTube creators use this, and we do too. There's quite a few different things from the winter HurricaneTrack off-season. Yep, you can get some of that to our branded stuff for the on-season. All kinds of things at the store there if you want to get something for yourself, a friend, a colleague, a loved one. It's not too late. Yeah, I should have mentioned this before Christmas. Probably would have been helpful. But I was busy. I forgot. I was traveling. I was out in the Dakotas, and then I had the family vacation. And I don't usually promote that kind of stuff as well as I should anyway. I got to get better at that. It helps to fund what we do. I realize that. And people want the swag. So there you go. It's a good New Year's gift, put it that way. So yes, a wet pattern, to summarize, out west, warming up in the east, and that pattern out west is going to be interesting. I got my eye on it. Not quite both of them yet. That means I'm pretty much fully engaged. Maybe for that second one coming in towards New Year's, I might consider taking some equipment out there. Got to figure out some kind of a game plan, talk to a couple of people. I was already in the Dakotas. May end up back there again. Who knows? I'm really fascinated, though, with how the weather interacts with the West. I've been out there for the monsoon and the heat months, right? I think it would be interesting to see it in the wet season with all this heavy snow that's coming. Maybe the Sierras, maybe someplace like Flagstaff. I've been in Flagstaff when there's thunderstorms and hail and heavy rain. Sedona, right? I've seen all that. Snow Canyon in St. George area of Utah. In the summer, when it's 109 degrees, I'd really like to see it when it's snowing heavily and there's rain and whatever. I think that would just be really interesting. So we'll see. I've got a lot to juggle here, a lot of projects I'm working on, but I'll tweet it and talk about it on social media if I decide that I'm going to go out there to celebrate 2023 in the West. We shall see. All right, you guys have a great rest of your week. It's, as always, I do appreciate you tuning in to what I've got to say. Hopefully you learned something along the way as well. Don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like it, and hit the notification button if you want to be notified. Although I read somewhere that doesn't usually do the trick. Who knows? It's just the algorithms. But anyway, good to have you following along. I am Mark Sudduth. That is it for this year. It does look like, unless something pops up between now and the 31st that warrants me to be back. If not, I'll see you again in early 2023.